Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, "How should a son of a lineage trained who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom?" Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Sharadvatiputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomenon. There is no quality of sight and so on, until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on, up to no old age and death and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhi soha. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva noble Avalokiteshvara that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Sharadvati Putra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
하예 조예 레와 공예 송 마레 세자 제제 세베 자제 소와 데나 소와 데 도제 젠보 데세 도제 차 조제 데로 보다 나로 변조 조베 보다 아데샤 야네 신로 주로 소와 Zhāng bō tōng mian yin nian nāng zhō de, chō dian di yue de dāng zhō bian bian, zhe zhō gu sā nu nian su lian wā, yā jī shī bian jī lāng sō wā de, yā yā yu mian shū jī lu zhō dāng, dā wā zhō bā shī bian ku zhō de, sā jī guan zhōng bā bā yā zhi sō, Dharma da ye je la so wa de, xie zhu da de zhong a de sha, a dang dian bie mian bo zhong de jie, nian jiu nang jie guo qie song la su, ga dang la ma nang la so wa de, gang jian xi de si jian zhong ga mo, mo da ri bie wang xiu jie cao jie, Dharma dian bie da bo ke zhu jie, yao se jie ba jie la so wa de, jiao song ge de la ma do jie chang, gang la gang de xie nian ci zong ne, jiao da dian mo mo zhu sun zi bie, zhe jie la ma nang la so wa de, rang jiao su rao ge la da ye mi, ye zang ta ba zhe bian zhong qiu, zai yue zhe bian ta ge zhe ba ye, san zai xian nian nang la so wa de, jie wo gun du yang da na ma da, zhe mian qu zhe bian la long xue jin, sa dang lang zhe yin de zhao zuo ne, do jie chang ge gong, 若多修三界圈，若觉胶囊囊相救不多多年就走，八月节节节变错难解，若了变现三界如不修三界，若能作觉胶囊囊相救不多多年就走，八月节节节变错难解。 若来变现三界，如不修三界，又当作界就能来相救不度多年就大概就界变错难解，若来变现三界，如不修。哎呀，这是，哎呀，当个是当的。 르마타 세그라 르마타 바나 예레네 다게 취시 바데 선제 당지게 된다 인스 대야 된다 대와 더버쇼 아니 다게 취년 바데 선제 당지게 된다 인 아니 조베 선제죠 뭐 더버쇼 내가 저기 카드만 되네 취송 뭐 제서 내가 좀 아니 다사칼 송제 아니 취송 뭐 시에네 송 네, 대송 뭐 예라 강스 아니 대나 예제네 내가 좀 주제 지스는 아니 친해제도 도 쓰인다.
As we have recited earlier, which is the refuge formula that we have recited by saying by means of for the that someone the individual, taking myself as an example, as he giving a teachings, would say, by means of giving these teachings, may I gain state of enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. As for the listeners, by means of listening to these performed teachings, may I reach this state of enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. just as we have recited, not only just we verbalize this, but we need to internalize it. And by reflecting one's mind upon the meaning of this verse, as we have said, we have a saying at the monastery where where that all those wonderful words or the positive words that has been expressed, along with that, one should also reflect one's mind upon the meaning of the word, not just by verbalizing, but internalizing the meaning of the word.
我那么那些等着去永远经过别的出来等着永远去这边马这边是的吧？等过别的出来永远就每年见那样，可能都说那样，可都是出来的去了，永远每年见那见的这个嘛咯。那我这个的去永远有嘛的是的，但我这个上到当别个了，但让你也上到当学的看着进度，那让你结果了上到当呢得别个了，从那看人都。人就了怕如果前的嘛，人让对方这呢两个级别高了，从那可能都接，是吧？但让你结果早起不接下呢，什么了基本用切啥的呗，然后呢，时间刚刚了基本13多去结束呢，那什么的西部用啥的用什么的是呢？那天天经过走了他。上节就当不同时的，让给3年要是，天天上节他妈也是的，就用数做不的，让给苦的连的，你怕老嘛多少钱？你一定要是做不的，去哪里嘛多的的，我说捐点点的送了。这个捐的3亿用过的去做啥，就要啥的上面也恰见的，通务要说呢，点点的没成就别的啊，国际现在那么记了啊。
So now the question is that is it really that we can gain state of enlightenment, something that is possibility? Is it something that really happens in actual reality? So this should be asked question to oneself, because at this time, we do not know how this state of enlightenment can happen by engaging in the practice and so on. If something that doesn't correspond to reality, then whatever the time that we are taking and effort that we are putting will all become fruitless. It doesn't make sense to do that. Now, so for that, to understand the possibility of achieving, state of enlightenment or the freeing oneself from this cyclic existence, we should think about that when we are being all by oneself, what kind of state of mind that one may have, one may develop. And then when we are actually interacting with some other individuals and having, connecting with all other sentient beings, such as, we are associating with our colleagues, our teamwork, and so on and so forth. What kind of state of mind that we are having. So we need to analyze that very carefully. And then one should again ask oneself, is it more beneficial to really think about one's own self based on one's self-cherishing mind, by following the self-cherishing mind? Or it is far more better we can think of the cherishing for the welfare of other sentient beings. So now, which one is more valuable, and which kind of state of mind makes us happier and gives us peace of mind? So it is therefore Buddha has stated that subjugation of one's mind or subduing one's mind is the teachings of the Dharma. So we need to understand what is the false side of the mind and what is the positive side of the mind, or what is the negative state of the mind, and what is this in the positive side of the mind. So we need to compare these two and to come to realization. When you have a realization of those are the part of the the negative state of mind, one should then come up an idea how one can really subdue that part of the mind and develop positive state of mind.
당가 쇼진의 산업도는 대로 근데 천대기 대지 친충진 친체야 대지 친충진 친체야 이제라 때문에 대지도 연구하지 다 딘되게 친충지 다까지 대지 소화 대지 진인 친체라 이제라 때고야나 아니 때 그거지 최선의 신의 사제이 때도 대화되어 선전할 때는 로고야나 맞아 가르치는 노고를 아니 찍고 대터로 지다 대지골로 선언들 해야 돼. 아니 맞아 노예서래什么 전쇼的 단어로 노예서래 말이지. 맞아 배 상축이 생기 로쇼 전종을 깨치시와이나 아니 맞아 이게 대지 준비진 진짜라 전에 때에 소고고 여봐. 대당 남비 취의 쇼에 때도 대화생에 대한 선전할 때는 조고고요나 아니 맞아 이게 되게 선언을 좀 해봤지. 아니 타지들 아니 지고 요나세이 아니 맞소나 나차지 열어요 말에.
So now think about our temporary state of happiness. Even in our temporary state of happiness of this life cannot coming into being without depending upon others. Period. So if once happiness is depending upon others, then why should we neglect the welfare of other sentient beings? Not only that, but also our very state of enlightenment that we all aspire to attain, it all depends upon other sentient beings. So now, if this is the case, then if you think of only for oneself and neglecting the welfare of other sentient beings, isn't that wrong? Isn't that the wrong way of thinking? We should think about, if we think of only oneself and neglecting the welfare of other sentient beings, and we are actually adapting the opposite of what is called bodhicitta, the opposite of bodhicitta. So this is the kind of the mental sickness that we all have. And really to analyze ourselves, do we have this kind of mental illness, which is, cherishing for one's own self and neglecting the welfare of other sentient beings?
Yeah. I'm going to drink an answer to you. Drink an answer to any Tambichene secret, Jibutambasong, Tani Jedi, Rani Jebanzi, Jones, Money Johnny Redon, Toma Meban, Tandapa, Rangi, Deji's son, Nicaletona de Judge Redan, Tanda Durma, the Yarn Domiate, and Nico, Dubin, not such in Bitaro.
So this is what the great beings of the past have said, the self-cherishing mind is the chronic disease of cherishing ourselves. So this is something that really, deprives us from developing the altruistic intention.
That again, Tarani, Chebanzi, Johnny, the Sibi, Dandala, and Jenny Junzi, Yen Chebanzi, Jinzi, Dandala, Langale, Ching again, the Chingache, 자체 수세나 사비 수세나 내가 시마 타바게니 사마 동바니 대다 추진데 땜바 쉐바예니 덤바 투베 온바 데라야 지 사보다 이제 단지 서지치지 차바오도서서데 사보 자체 주 송신베지 네 나를 라마스 주 권등이 지라게 되지 남바라 메바지.
So in order to overcome this, the chronic disease of cherishing for ourselves, we're then following the teachings, which actually clears the path free from this chronic disease of cherishing ourselves. It is therefore we are at the present we are on the teachings of the profound emptiness. And so now let's take our time to meditate or to visualize Buddha Shakyamuni, who actually possess those qualities, of qualities of understanding the profound emptiness, in conjunction along with altruistic intentions, who is then surrounded by great other masters.
아라 디징에 나와네 란데 란치 거도 소리지 소나메 저와체 아니 타예 비스 란게 전체 파마즈베니 지 롬바 데네파 바자체를 돈에니 비지 나케 타도냐 비스지 요소도 바지 최저기 데렌치 지 최친년제 사보다 자체 최친년제 사게니 최대라 요사 대한 단지 맞은 로라 펜시 상제도 쇼스바나 기 선바지 송도 지여서는 이게 소체슈도 소속의 선바대 시화다 선바 커냐마 이제 선바대 가인은 주초조로 지로 하면서 또 샤비세데 자와생이 되지 가인은 바지 참보찬등에 지 주보찬등에 서로 통용비거라 라서로는 버득이 소리 지르 조jen이나.
So then, being oneself in their presence and surrounded by all other sentient beings, by reflecting one's mind upon, beginning from the people who are in your surrounding, and then broadening that aspect, thinking about the people of entire country, and then furthering that, and try to imagine that all sentient beings, without exceptions, they are equal to the space, and then think about how important it is for us to transform our mind. There's a way that we can really transform our mind. If one's mind is transformed, or if one's present mind can be transformed into the mind of loving kindness, then this can really cool our disturbing states of mind and, the negative state of mind. With this, take a couple of minutes to visualize. Having developed such an altruistic intention or the positive motivations, we are then listening to the teachings, the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So let's think about the lineage gurus of this particular teachings. So let's try to condense the lineage gurus here. First, Buddha Shakyamuni, who actually taught the perfection wisdom, which is then transmitted to Maitreya, who then composed the ornament of clear realizations. And then this goes down, transmitted down to Datisha Divamkara Shirijana, who in turn transmitted to Lama Tsongkhapa. So it is a brief way of, mentioning the lineage gurus of the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So therefore, this covers the first outline, the Lam Rim outline, which is the greatness of the authors given in order to show the teachings as a noble source. So when we go through this the first outlines, so one should think about, one should reflect one's mind upon the qualities of those great beings. So this the subject matter of the teachings, the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, is the teachings of the Mahayana, beginning from Mahayana practice, in other words, beginning from reliance upon the spiritual teachers, all the way to the state of normal learning, the unity of normal learning, which is the complete state of enlightenment. And those teachings are elaborated with the teachings of the profound and vastness, profundity and vastness, sorry. Which is then next outlines showing the greatness of the teachings in order to engender respect for the teachings and how to listen to the teachings on which both teachings and its authors are great. So those three outlines are the preliminary. It teaches about the preliminaries. And then the actual teachings will begin under the headings of the sequence in which the disciples are to be taught the actual instructions. So, which then, further the two outlines, how to rely on the teachers, which is the root of one's spiritual path, and how the students then train their mind after having relied on the teachers. So when we go through, when we are going through this outlines, then try to think of, reflect one's mind upon the actual contents of this, and it's really give you a special feelings. So if those individuals who are actually practicing Lam Rim on their day-to-day life, then having those outlines memorized is very important, because by memorizing those outlines, one can begin to reflect one's mind upon the beginning of the teachings of Lam Rim all the way to the end.
The Sanjana Shobalo Zilla song, Sanjana Robal Lobe, Tashira Revalo, Sanja Maduba, the Malobalo, Rebanisha, Atomoni Desa, Alobalo, Rebanisha Balani, Tibachima Chilla, the Chibato Dojetivan, Atombola song, Shansan Lobal Londejan, Jesse, Londejan, Johnny Jesse, numbers on Zone Jetani Bitsuage. La zone Jetani Bitsulani, Kana Lobby, song, Kana Lobby, Del Lobana, Del Lobby, Baji, Tatomani Disa, that Del Lobby Remani, Shabachula, the Chiba, the Pajatamani, Omadriza, Pajatamani, Hozilla, Saji, Drew inside. Shannon Piashi, but Shannon Lord of the Yawa, Denny Dingen the Digit, but Shannon Lord of the Yawa. Then you got hungry with the same, going about social hubs. That don't tumble at the distance. That's also not a song, Chanel, not a half on what's age. Tatamudis, Talaton Latin, Laton to sort them, but Laton the Rabia, Laton Gambis, Gambia Laton to be age. Tatom Laton you sort them by singing the line. John Denton, you don't just sort of Merlon, Ludu, you could wonder with switch at that one. And it Tumbani Della Page. Tatomani Della Page, and song you say. Gaja Mazoma, ne Gaja Gumazon Jelugaba, ne Gaja Mazing the Bijanse, Mare, Tequanani Telapet, Moji, Tatombola Tequanani and Jubilee, but Tequan Mori, and it tell I ne Gaja Mazing the Bijanse, Gaja Mazibi Jelugaba, ne Rono Japas. Tamas of course, Kaba, and Tonio to be Haton Gilla Cheva Senere, Tonio to be Tawa Toma, Gilla Chevala, and also Tumbani, said Tanda Matsuki Karen Zendo, Gaja Karen Mazi, Kanrechila Matson Zen Roduri, Tanda Pola, any Matsu Karich and Kovasana, any dancing, Dotun Zen and Matsu Koala Kovaris, Lavora. The Dotun Zimba Karere, Dotun Meva Karere, Dotun Zinsi Karere, Saytela, and Gajam Zimbas. Gaja Mumanzi Bijilu Gabasidi, and Temba de on the Shane, Tawasul Trotama Rara, Tawatela baby girl, and Gaja death and Deshisha Gajari, and De Gaja the Manzi and there, and Yana Tata never and Chetala never is any Gaja Mumanzi Bijilu Gabas, and any Tanamas Kosubaba, and Gaja Mumanzi Bijilu Gabas, tell did.
So now we are on the chapter of negating the other system. Is now the negating the other system is that first we need to think about what is meant by emptiness, and what actually precludes us from realizing emptiness. And when we ask these questions, then suddenly the grasping at true self is the main you know, obstacles that prevents us from understanding emptiness, which then, lead us within this cyclic existence, and that revolves, that inevitably, uncontrollably makes us revolve within this cyclic existence. So now, if this is the case, and what is meant by grasping at self? How do we actually, identify the grasping at self? When they ask these questions, then importance of identifying the object of negation. So when it comes to the identifying the object of negations, then the object of identifying the correct object of negation is important, because when it comes to the object of negations, there are many ways in which many ways of negating object of negation in accordance with the different philosophical tenets, and each philosophical tenets claims that their way of negating object of negation is correct way of negating object of negations. So, however, if you look at this point, when we were going through these teachings, we're actually, negating the other's, system, and by identifying the way other system is negating their object of negation, it's not a correct object of negations.
当저기 내가 그写个내가这就가르쳐서说呢 내가 저기道的学法是的道以门道以前的道主他们我写的道门道以前的写아니 주타 뭐 제때 텐제 차라기 전에 아니 동보 제가 전제 텐제 켈링에 아니 맞아 대마 되니라 하자다 근데 야스게 대상이 많이 랑게 차실라 텐데 주바 생이게 엄마 봤을 때 텐제 됐어 차 아니 타지도 엄마 탄제 와서비 거라 이든 주바 디상여 말에 세비 거지라 아니 동보 주타 뭐 이제 따이고는 차라기 조리 대지시다
So here, when we think about the philosophical tenets, each of those philosophical tenets, they have their own standpoint, the viewpoint, and their own conducts and views, in other words. And when it comes to the conducts, there are many different, comes to the views, the view of ultimate nature of reality, they have many different views depending upon their own understanding of the correct view of ultimate nature of reality. So, for instance, there are many subtleties of the views. For instance, if you, in the context of the first two, philosophical tenets such as Vaibhashika and Sujantaka, their way of understanding of dependent originations is, or the view, in other words, is based on the cause, the result dependent upon the cause, and cause and effect dependent of cause and effect is their way of understanding. This will then further, go a subtle way of understanding, dependent originations. And not only that, but also then depending upon parts and wholes, the wholes and parts are dependent upon each other's and depending upon other factors. Then we will go further. In other words, Madhyamaka Prasangika's standpoint of dependent originations is mere conventionally existence, mere nominally existence. Mere existence is the most subtle way of understanding of dependent originations, which is propounded by Madhyamaka Prasangika only.
Oma Tanjo tell you, any Drutama non do sit della, any Taranila Taula Tara Yomare, any Tawa Topi, Karsata, Talandri Chilamato, Taula Tara Yamata saying it, Gilupa le Jembaye, Taranila Taula Tara Shegmadoa. And not so G. Ranula, and Oma Tanjoa Menchela, and Inchimichi Tata Nedota. Then Umar Ranlu tell Oma Tanjawari sing it ella, and Charagi Utin the Trupa did saw him ever sing it in Jigamidu. Did Jana and Tanya to Joe Tubumare said, and Tanda Mazo Gajang Woman Bijilu Gavas Coast, Boba Casa de Teredoa.
So each and every philosophical tenets claims that their way of identifying the view of ultimate nature of reality is said to be the supreme. And then other systems are criticized as falling into the extreme views of nihilism, extreme views of eternalism. So the Lama Tsongkhapa's standpoint here is standpoint of ultimate nature of reality is based on Madhyamaka Prasangika's understanding, Madhyamaka Prasangika's standpoint. And so then here again, when it comes to the Madhyamaka Prasangikas in a different tradition of the Buddhist practitioner in Tibet, and other than Lama Tsongkhapa's followers, in other words, the Gelugpa traditions, all other tradition will say that there's no subtleties of the ultimate nature of reality, view of ultimate nature of reality between Madhyamaka Swatantika and Madhyamaka Prasangika. However, when it comes to Lama Tsongkhapa's standpoint, Lama Tsongkhapa's way of identifying this too, he makes a distinction between the difference between with regard to ultimate nature of reality between Madhyamaka Swatantika and Madhyamaka Prasangika.
나서 랑루레 테 녜바자 맞어 변에 지기루레 세나레 오만 탄저와라 나네 타라니라 나사히 쳐봐요라 다 랑지바게 아니 랑신 랑만의 주바 랑신 주바 켈레워 탄저와게 비티는 주바 트라이 점모상지요나 아니 타바다 탄제 쳔바 탄제 쳔바도 콘데지 나자 존재 당샤 두고 말송어라.
So here if you look at the Madhyamaka Prasangika, the viewpoint in Madhyamaka Swadhantika's standpoint, there are a big difference. There are a big gap between these two, because whereas the Madhyamaka Swadhantikas, when they go through critical analysis, there's something that can be findable. Whereas Madhyamaka Prasangika, if you go through the critical analysis, there's not even atoms that can be found as something that exists inherently or intrinsically. So therefore, it is said that Madhyamaka Prasangika has stated that as long as you are adhere to have a view of something that exists intrinsically from its own side, even the slightest view that you have, you hold on to that, and you will not gain the perfect liberations. And you will be, precluded from, gaining liberations.
다 천하solong에 다만 되기 just 당거선 우주제 개만에 다 소소게 이때는 제바제 다 이때는 주바 디자인 매바치 시샤체비 톤 제와이나 아니 콘데제 나자 태사레 태사 말에 야 데미바 코로나에 나네 수주버랑 코로나는 주바지야나 야 이제는 떼바 말에서 나자데 태사레 태사 말에 네 딘트기 산나타에 랑가 지제 다 지단에 라오제 당 안도우지에서 안도우지 세거를 다 커가잖아 이때는 주바지 자이 점모상지 요소나 땡땡 거바면도 다 땡바다 지체다 차시 강라야지 땡 친제라 코로나는 주바 maybe 따레스네. 아니 대권의 지자체나 산나도나 지세 여체와서 이제 통과를. 다들 맞아도 양 공시 수치하다니 관시.
So now, when I'm saying this is the Madhyamaka Prasangika standpoint, which is that there's no such things that exist intrinsically across the board and the entire spectrum of phenomena, then that doesn't mean that you should put in effort to go through that. I'm not saying that at all, but you should analyze yourself whether that upholds that non-existence, non-intrinsic existence of across the board, or something that can be something that exists intrinsically from its own side. So which one is more suitable for one's own, one's own mind and one's own way, one's own practice? Which one, if one upholds the either one of these two, in other words, which is more beneficial for oneself, and which one will be make more sense? From my own side, as I've been, following these teachings, particularly the teachings of the Lam Rim Chenmo, for myself, that I find more reasons and I find more rationales behind understanding of non-inherent existence of across the board.
되지. 따와서도 뭐저도 제바 이제서 나고라. 아니 너저 배제 돈이 제바제네. 제대니 그러와. 당가서 쇼바 상축이 산다 니지센도 세나 고 내려서 걸어 미바지는 문제 제서서나 코로나 양도 공시제나 라질이 제여야지. 따와 리스 따바들 고 실력이 차도 인자디 일 제바제나 따와랑 질이 제나마도 지 야샤선의 지 고변도였어요.
So when it comes to the standpoint of ultimate nature of reality, it requires a lot of analytical, thought processes. It requires a lot of analysis, because it is through one's own critical analysis one will then, reach. One will at some point one will be able to reach the point where that convince you to think that is the real, that is what I think is ultimate nature of reality. It is unlike the practice of method aspects, such as meditation on compassion and bodhicitta and so on. The bodhicitta is something that requires repeated meditations rather than going through analytical meditations. Whereas again here, whereas the understanding of this ultimate nature of reality, the view of ultimate nature of reality requires a lot of analytical meditations and analytic thought processes that takes us to the understanding of ultimate nature of reality.
되지. 대단히 저당이 노동을 지가서 용 맞춰보면 시비거나 근데 소소랑로라 지 같은 다소도 매매 가서랑로 대령에 대 고소세 주사면 손에 차도나 이제 이거만 사는 게 되게 라라도 이제 세대이바.
좀 이제 손난 게 이제
당가서 저들 용이마 용랑이마 친이 제비거라 아니 타만도 어떤 들이지 차송사에게 네 고아르지 매번 몸보를 사더나요 그래서 세슈도 차고로 이게 예 쇼동들이 제토나 되는바.
So it is just a form of summarization. I'm just presenting this because if we go through those teachings, it's quite vast, and if we cannot reach any conclusion, then we might find that it's of no use of going through these teachings. So I just try to, giving this form of, conclusion or sort of a summarization of what is ultimate, the view of ultimate nature of reality in accordance to the Madhyamaka Prasangika.
Yopa mima yi mepa mayi xie sewa yino. Xie mawa zangla rewe ne gendo shadashi, gendo shadashi ma xin. Ome de chunze jang me xue de, chunze jang me xue de, deba jila ro jita. Nanga jido di chunze.
So let's read this. The page 146, begin for the first paragraph. Therefore, if you claim that these phenomena are essentially existent, then you're a proponent of real things. You have fallen into the extreme of intrinsic existence. However, to hold that these phenomena simply exist does not make you a proponent of real things or the proponent of real existence. Similarly, if you hold that internal and external things are non-things, devoid of capacity of perform functions, then you are propounding the non-existence of things, and you have fallen into the extreme of non-existence. However, you have not fallen into the extreme of non-existence by saying that things lack intrinsic existence. Lord, that's chair, that's chair. I think that's all. And some Tibetans who claim in the Madhyamaka, the Kazinyama, the Junta Ngemek, and the lawyer, that's and then Dharma thing a loss and long. There's some Tibetans who claim to Madhyamakas do not distinguish utter non-existence from the absence of intrinsic existence and do not distinguish essential existence from mere existence. They hope to avoid falling into the extreme of existence and non-existence simply by saying we do not claim that things are non-existence. That's all.
당연히 되는다. 다 되니 되는데 네 강의도 계속 가르치는 다진 가서 넣어서 아니 매파 말이 여파 말이 여미매미 따와 크는 게 단단히 가기도 여미매미 따와 되 크네 매파 생인데 그 rangi 매파를 여파데 뭐 주고 여파 말에서 나오기 지단에 여파 말이 매파 말에서 나서나 네 되게 탄에 장지 제마도
So here what it says is now, if one accepts the things doesn't exist, things are, nor it is nor it is existence, neither it is non-existence. So this is, if someone who holds this kind of view, and such individual is far from understanding of the standpoint of middle way. Sorry.
So
if one is there to accept this things that is neither existent nor non-existence, then there's no way that we can there's no things that can become a functions. The functionality is not there at all. So how can we, if one accept that kind of views, and how can we establish, the form and the agents and its existence and fruition and so forth.
Tenis Katsan Chuguba Rani Kelan Jendo Deni Kaya maybe turned to be shadow. Deta Shikaya Ruan Shila Ranjin Yoda Meche Taba Shibena Denis Katsan Chuban Dego de Mandubi Ponson Yona Ranjin Yoga the member in Kanyin Shi Taba Shaw Merite Pena Kado to Yona Mo Pena Kado to Yona Mobo Yodan Sebo Yeji Jibadan Rao. Data Ranjin Yumenis Kazan Chuban, Jishela Yumenis Kazan Chubala Rale de Pena Dembala Dembichi and Dembi Doma Kazan Chuba Jiji Down Domanis Kazan Chuba Tai Zenon Data Kazan Chunane Ponson Do Gobe Deni Kanyan maybe Chun Doba Boju de Zundo Les.
We say that they are not existence, and we do not claim that things exist, and we say that they are not a non-existence. This is nothing but mass of contradiction. It does not, it does not in the least explains the meaning of the middle way. For when they refute others, they perform the functions via an investigation, their investigation of whether or not something intrinsically exists. Therefore, they have to limit the possibility to two. It intrinsically exists or it does not. It in making their own assertion by claim that there is something that is neither of those two. Why should they have a limit to the possibilities of the two when they investigate something to see whether or not it intrinsically exists? Because if there were a third possibility beyond those two, it would not be reasonable to investigate the questions, which is it intrinsically existence or non-intrinsically existence. It would be as though there were the color, and someone asks, is it blue or it is yellow? Limiting things to two properties, either they intrinsically exist or do not derive from the universal limitation that anything imaginable either exists or does not exist. Similarly, the limitation that what truly exists must either truly exist or single, or truly exist or plural, is based on the universal limitation that anything must be either single or plural. When there is such a limitation, any further alternative is necessarily produced. Hence, it is utter nonsense to assert a phenomenon that is neither of those two. Asanga's refutation objection says so. Let's take a 10 minutes break here.
Nga zo tengi na tanji kedan ni tenji che ta ndi ke che tanji ke che ka sa na de nga zo gaja ten lo fe se ne kan ni go chung ji so na de pe ke che ma ta de nga zo ye na gaja ben ran shi ju ba ye de ye ma re se de ni ya na ye ba yin go re ya na me ba yin go re ye me ni se ka sa je ba ji ke lian xin la ni ye ba ma yin me ba ma yin se na ke ne na ji ge ma re ye so dong bo ji de ka wi You know,
wow, so we are discussing on, the negating the system, other systems here. Now, so when we talk about, whether things exist intrinsically or non-intrinsically, if things exist, if things, exist intrinsically or non-existence, non-intrinsically existence, or things that exist or non-existence. If the things should be either existent or it should be non-existence. But if this is the universal logic, and this is the universal logic, if it is something that is existent, it should be existed, and if it doesn't exist, then it should not be exist. If you say that it is not existence and nor exist, neither existence nor exist in it, non-existence, then that doesn't make much sense. So this is what we are actually refuting right now. Someone who is accepting nor non-existence, neither existence. It's what we are refuting at this point.
Jidane, you the mess, Jidane, you the mess, Kesha, Deni, Mato, Jishela, Yana Yoba Younger, Yana Meba Younger said, Kasan Chobar was, touch over was. That Ranshin to Yana, Yana Yoba Younger, Yana Meba Younger, and it can't do the Medus and the Tachichas and Rogre, so.
So if things exist, then it should be existed. It should exist, and if it doesn't exist, then it shouldn't be exist. And there's no third possibilities, logically. And if you say that things that nor non-existence and neither existence and so forth, then that really doesn't make much sense. And once things are existent, it should be existed. And if it doesn't exist, then it doesn't exist at all.
Any Teni Kansan Chepaji, Mewaina, Gaja Rigu Mari Kalasana, Bena, and Kato Yuri as a catcher, and a Kato Sebo Yuri, Mabu Yuri, Chibare, Kato Sebo, the Mabu Mai, Kato Yakandro, and Kansan Cheyamar, Yana Yoba Yana Teni, Taji Chinchilla, and Langachin and Rosona, Rondo Chugri Mado, or Kato Yuri as an any Sebo Yuri, Mabu Yuri, Chabasanji, and Kado Meba the touch to Mari, Telejim Kado Junker and Damada Euro.
So if one attempt to, hold such such then one will not be able to find the object of negations, because if that things exist and it should be existed, that doesn't exist, it is non-existence. It's a universal law. And there's nothing that we could come up and saying, having some ideas of things that nor non-existent and neither existence and so on is not gonna bring to reality, right? So just as we have talked about earlier, that it would be though there were a color and someone else it is blue or it is yellow. So there are many other colors other than blue and yellow, right?
Yana Shezala Yana, Yoba Yingo, Yana Mepa Yingo, Jetan Shezala. That Jeta, any Ranshi to Yana, Ranshi to Yoba Yingo, Yana Ranshi to Mepa Yingo, but just Shezala, you mean is Kata should be Jenseres.
So, in general, right, if things exist and it should be exist within the spectrum of phenomena, within the domain of phenomena, it should be existed. If it doesn't exist, then it is non-existence. There's nothing to be argued about it, right? Then similarly, when it comes to things exist intrinsically or it doesn't exist intrinsically or non-intrinsic existence and so on, and it should be it is, if that exists, then it should exist intrinsically. Well, what we're talking here is now, if something that exists, that is intrinsically, or if it doesn't exist, then it is that it is non-existence of intrinsicness.
되지. 변화시 된 거죠. 단다 오면 이게 파션이 좋은 논로라. 변화 데메 되는 페이퍼가 아니 지티 트레저리 바생지 소한테 된디 카토데 교도와 변화 덴바 주바요나 지다 담아 강로도 주바요 그래스. 지다 담아 강로도 주바면은 덴바 주바메 그래스. 세네니 데페샤나 소다.
So there's a reasonings that we find in the find in the Perfection Sutra or the teachings of the perfections, where it says that if something that exists, it should exist whether it's singular or the plural. If it doesn't exist, if the things doesn't exist, that neither of these two, then it should not be existence.
당가 수시질을 마셔야 되나 맞죠. 가서 강사로 지르만 야와 있는 시질을 마잖아. 아니 가서 데마마주데 데마투바치던 데마투비치다 담아 강로도 매베 싫으잖아. 다들 거로 변화 포지 변화 나치제서는 저기를 가서 강요로 치지. 아니 데마투바메데 데마투바치다 담아 강로도 마주비 싫으잖아. 다 거로.
So in other words, one can express this syllogistic reasonings, the reasoning of syllogism, where we could say that I am not exist truly. I have no true existence, or I am not truly existence, because I'm not truly existence either singularly or the plurally.
다 되는 데마투바 변화 데마투바 치데 마주데세 연주 때라 따주지 바고 데마투바 치데메데 차체인 비에셔스라고 차체 차셰데 차체 맞아 타투네 텐데지 바투비셔 데레 데마투바 치데메데 차체인 비에셔스 라시투바 치데메데 차체인메세나 라시투바 지자체는 거다.
So things doesn't exist. For instance, let's take another example. There's things doesn't exist singularly, because things exist by depending upon its other factors. It's not singularly existence because it is dependent upon other factors.
다 차체인 비셔세디 근데 차체에나 데마투바 메거디 제데 가르사나 차체다 참에세에 되니 무슨 강관계래 아니 참에는 시작을 요 말에 차체 참에 응게 관시 참에 차체 참에 응게 관시 참에 시작을 미스비 셔서는 것도 딱 그때 될 거다 그때 조윤데 따다 제투나 이제 제다 되잖아 차체 변나 데마투바 치드메데 차체인 비셔서 차체에나 데마투바 치드 메거 가르쳐서나 차체의 참여니데 야나 차체인 거를 야나 참여인 거를 참여세의 시작을 메디 다 차체마도 로서면 좋아.
So there's, in other words, now things doesn't exist. This doesn't exist, singularly, because it exists with its parts, which is parts. So there's no such thing that exists partlessly. There's no such thing that exists without a part. That's all.
되지. 다 되는로와. 또저도 되셔. 타도는 된데 주고 차실을 때는 주바데 된데 천이래. 제다. 타도는
So
된데
in general, what is meant by dependent originations is dependent originations is something that existed by depending upon others, by depending upon other factors. That is what meant by dependent originations.
다 라지 주고 지데 메바세데 타도네 텐데지 발로도네 라지 주도 지데 메바데 차진라 텐데 주지라 아니 라지 주고 담아메데 라지 주고 지데 메데 지메나 몽보용 시고 말와 몽보 생에데 지르 되발레 텐데 종으로 와스.
So there's no such things that exist intrinsically in the context of singularity, because it exists singularity, and nor the things that exist intrinsically in plurality.
예. 된저기 리피기 랑가치 노로라. 아니 배나 가송이나 간진이나리 배나 가샤도 보진 건지체 ini dentugi nga tsogi yin zimba nanghe de yudu no yosari yosamari zene jeba jena ini yoda me ni shenbe ki kongsoba jime ba taji zane da yona yana ji yogore yana dima yogore ini ji yona ini chachen tegu mare ini chachen ma dena chame yogore chame ni sheja mundu da chachen ma do rosa medi deba chuba ji de me ba taji Number two, but cheat the manna, number two, but Toma member Changini, any Rashi to be cheated, Tama, Ninka member the touch of Kala, any Tanji meet it, you didn't meet it, share your son of those. Ganja the Mare to get and drop.
Yeah. Rimche Jay soon again, it Tata Sumaso.
Tangani Pena Ma Pesha Kesha Messiah, Susan Angel Bachi, Yanan and Maganji Jangi on the town. Tanga so ye. Say the two to two, but the 2 minute truding and sending it and do it. And that Dembatuba Yosari Yosamari, Sanadodi, and it Dembatuba, Dembatuba Chita, Tamakano to Yokore. So that's Ganja to Santo, the Gans, Sanatoni, repeat Chabachin. That Dembatuba, any Chita Truba Mede, any Chache was. And Chache the Chami, Yana Chache, Yana Chachi, Metani, Lejebi Ponsubachin, Shigomari. 참여 생애들 시절하면 다 차지해 거 차지해나 때는 때는 라시지 마두고 그래. 다 때는 데바투바 치트면도스. 데바투바 치면은 데바투바 도마 연시 말 치트만을做네 용고를 세트라 용비가라. 아니 단지 아스디 추투도 주되게 띠인데 진짜 사나 돈에 네 밑에 시도 그래서.
So now when we are practicing when we are engaging in the practice of practicing or analyzing how that I or self that exists. So we should apply this reasonings by saying that is the so-called I, does it really exist intrinsically from its own side? If it is so, then it should exist. Does it exist singularly, or does it exist plurally? If that doesn't exist singularly, then how can it exist plurally? Truly exist intrinsically, in other words, because the plurality can be established based on the singularity. Without singularity, how can we claim that that's a plurality? So therefore, that there's no such things that exist intrinsically, intrinsically by its own side, nor it exists intrinsically by depending upon others, because that doesn't make any sense at all. If you say that it's already, you already have, if one holds that something that exists intrinsically and inherently, then dependently existence doesn't make any sense at all. So this is how we should always, analyze and see what we think about. When we analyze ourselves, is that does it really exist? What we think that exists, and then the way we think of it, that something that exists is something that is really there or not.
And the ship kind of watched the Yopashesona, and it come upon the Zimbabwe door, come Yopashesona, Koyaban the Zimbabwe door, and one guess it in a G shitting in Yopa the Shesona, and the Haragi come about the Kendo, one guess over. You mean you were the Mosan Kawarwa.
So, in general, right, it's that's existence and non-existence are directly contradictory, right? If something that exists, then as soon as you know that exists, then your view of non-existence of that will be eradicated. And as soon as you know that there's something that doesn't exist there, then your view of existence of that particular entity is will be eradicated. So this is what we call, directly contradictory. If something that exists, then it should exist. If something that doesn't exist, then it should not be exist at all.
되지. 여면이 가상 최고래 타 최고래 세디 네 여바만이 매바만이 아니 니가 마잉에 니가 마잉바 마잉에 되는 명예 질라 가상 최서라고 본송바 매바잖아.
So there is no other, third possibilities other than whether it should be, whether it is existent or non-existence. And other than this two, will not be able to find. By finding that is what we call, not possibility of there's no third possibilities.
대단하게 이게 차체 참여 먹게 생겼는데 고아 텔레 나와요래. 차체 참여세도서나 차실라 땡에지나 아니 차실라 마땡에지 마잉에 차로래. 차실라 마땡아지나 아니 때는 매바지인도 그래. 된지기 돈은 차체 참여 먹게 생겼는데 이지지 되는 고아에서나 아니 된지지 고아들아 빨리 그래서.
Then similarly here, the part and partless are, directly contradictory. Something that is partless, then there shouldn't be any parts, and there shouldn't be any other factors that should be dependent upon. So if there's no something that exists depending upon others, there shouldn't be anything.
변나 맞아 제가 봐요 제가 뭐 보기에서 자체에 받아라 봐샤고 그래 변나 난카도 고치래 시소나 난카데 로이 샤장세디 변에 토레 까장지 차라 난카선은 따바자리마도 델레시엠바게 난카치 제샤서 게요 말이었어 근데 고아들이 토레 까장지 차지라 아니 난카선은 라바레스.
So yes, here when we talk about, that the things exist depending upon other factors, and suddenly when we refer this to something things that has a functions, then it is easy to understand, right? But then when it goes further, such as permanent phenomena, such as space and so on, then our understanding of things that dependent upon others become a little bit subtle, and it is a little bit more complex to understand how this space is dependent upon others. So the actual definition of space itself is called mere free of obstructions. Mere free of obstructions is said to be the definition of the space.
되지. 다 차실라 템바세데 템바생에 되게 가서 또 많이 고거를 sonda ten시 주니 못었을 때 ten세다 로유디 아니 라운드 매바 제다지라 텐에 여바지리 셰유디 가라 아니 라운드 주고 매바지 고유디 라운이 동안들 또 많이 세그라.
So now when we talk about things that exist dependently, then that entails things doesn't exist independently, right? It actually, as when we say that things exist dependently, things exist dependently, then it actually, completely, negates the independent existence. So when it negates the independent existence, then it becomes a devoid of independent existence. The understanding of devoid of intrinsic existence is the meaning of emptiness.
땡 종세디 종시 탄이 수요 땡세디 니 종세디 질 때는 여바디 시여디 탄이상도 여바도 고를 써다.
So dependent and originations is something that exists conventionally, not ultimately, but conventionally.
땡용 생에되게 demba니까 아니 지자도 저거래서 아니 저기 타니까 지자도 세벌을 살아요데 되게 도셔 되게 아니 이제 되게 견조된 뭐 시대에 되게 단단한 뭐가 땡용으로 와 그래서 이제 다치니 지자도 방투를 세대 정말 그 된제지 발을 비지고서 라고 이제 세다로 ripa jenji kola to gochi goba mase koronge ani gaja je yumbi kola ani tachi ni tachi chicha de pang ani se lao yundu kola ani tenje gi ripa de ribi jebore soda.
So this Tenjung, the word Tenjung, actually describes both conventional reality, conventional existence, and ultimate reality. Within this, the word that Tenjung, actually, describes both convention and also the ultimate. Because by having not only just describing, but when you understand the Tenjung or the dependent originations, will then dispels the view of nihilism and view of eternalism, and this by understanding this dependent originations, things exist dependently designated, will then prevent oneself from falling into the extreme view of eternalism and extreme view of nihilism. So therefore, the reasoning of dependent originations is known as king of reasoning among all the reasonings.
민자네 nga tsuge yile cheba kareche sona chi ranglu la tenje gi ripate kunen roaina yu kanje den saje tona nga chungjo gi matsa so de ra gre roa tenje ji khoyena ta tenje yana yana ji chen de tenje yin go re yana chashe den den yana to be ta sa je tenje yin go re ta ti ju ngo pot kare gi tenje re do ne tenje songa tin re do e mdu e sne one din sabo gi to ne nyane yana re yitene cheba che to nge chi yana so
now, whenever we go through the analysis of objects or any entity that we are going to analyze, and once analysis is based on understanding of dependent originations, then that really takes oneself to the sudden path where we can venture and or where we can where we can reach the destination of the ultimate reality. When it comes to when we are going through such analysis based on dependent originations, it should be either by dependent upon cause and effect. One's idea of dependent origination must be based on dependent upon cause and effect, or dependent upon other factors, or the dependent upon mere imputation by concept and term. So without having such ideas, if one go through analysis without devoid of the dependent originations, then one will not this will not take us to any, you will not find that actual destination.
Tade tenre ta tiso ki tiso tenro la kanga ki cheba cha sa tenre ki ji kanga denja go ne ji le le ko la ne tenre je riba te tao de shoba ninga ki jana khone je he jana ne so so la ma densa no je be to ne xie chou do.
So if one has if one have a proper understanding of dependent originations, then not only the understanding of dependent origination is beneficial for explaining this the view of emptiness or the view of ultimate nature of reality, but also very beneficial for us to when we are asked to explain about the bodhicittas. With the understanding of this dependent originations, based on understanding of dependent originations, if one explain what the bodhicitta really means, will become more profound and comprehensive.
이제 제가서 대야 맞아. 집에 첨부기만 치지대 조지기만 손에 ран지 또 배동해지 강시제 동에게 양다세가 깨는데야지 란이 이게 동해 강에 집에 전세대 시에 대전라 보네 니 이제 동해 세다 제거에 집에 초래 송용데 대 된저이 돈으로 와.
So then also that Adisha has stated in his the path, lamp or path to enlightenment, where he has stated that first one must understand one's own sufferings. Based on one's own sufferings, then think about the suffering of other sentient beings. So this is also again this very explanation that he has given is based on dependent originations.
단지에서는 란이 초다네 산나동에서데 란이기 대지 츠비지야나야 젠나 때는 정보고야나 아니 제 여와도 란이 찍고 대화도네 지금 말했어야 돼 생각하다로.
So it is, even on one's own, the temporary happiness that we talked about earlier, that just for a temporary happiness is dependent upon others, then suddenly one's achievement of ultimate state of happiness is dependent upon others. So therefore, working for, cultivating or developing the thought that cherishes other sentient beings are really valuable.
사제게 취지 지니까 좀 땡땡이라 상대주 대형 양년 대시대 신주문제 처럼에 서야 돼서 다 제세들이 이제로 왔다 가서 제바지는 문제된 신화세는 뭐 소소 장발랜드 소매지 따와 공시진 거네 바라고는 전 대들마도 뭐네잖아 다 사제게 통만에만 소용이 비거라 바지 강가시도 년년으로 그치 야타나 년도로 그 만도는 년도로 그 소리지 뭐네잖아 레도아 투세와 첨부이 제이비거라 So
itself, Buddha has, given the teachings right from the beginning of his teachings. He began his teachings based on dependent originations, and it is through giving the teachings of dependent originations he led all sentient beings to the path of enlightenment. So, because our mind, it was our untrained minds have not been affected by these teachings up until now. It is therefore we are revolving within this unenlightened existence from the beginningless time up until now.
제야 대단 더버 대네 추 강라이양 풍소도비 장에 조사메바 텐소사오 코난제데 유메 유메라 소비 지 넘버 지비 지쇼 용수 미제비 셔로 이메라 소방 가시라 풍소메반데 나네 유메라 균에 총반 주의 셔로 된다와 되네 우미 용래 유미메미지 손비 치장了出版行业点点那呢越帮没帮些嘛没容易些嘛没容易些都유미메미 양嘛没的的没些个了样点的送比小了送的
Now let's read through the text. As Nagarjuna's refutation of objection says, if the absence of intrinsic nature were refuted, then the presence of intrinsic nature would be proven. Moreover, there will always be some doubt in the minds of those who make this claim because they have no way of making a definitive list, and that excludes any further alternative. This is because as they see it, the exclusion of one possibility, such as exist or does not exist, does not entail that the other possibility. If they accept except that there are some cases such as is and such as not, which exclude any further alternatives. Then they should know that it is exactly the same in the case of exist and does not exist. Evidently, their position is an overly literal misunderstanding of Madhyamaka text, that they say is non-existence, is not existence and is not non-existence. Therefore, if as they claim it is inappropriate to say exist or do not exist, then it would also be wrong to say it's not existent and it's not non-existence, because those Madhyamaka texts says that you should reject all four possibilities. So if one accepts as not existence and is not non-existence, then you are trying to find a third possibilities. If one is here to upholding such views, then you will never find the ultimate views. So just as things either exist or non-existence, exist or the non-existence are the universal logic. Similarly, things is or is not is also learned by the universal logic. So as long as you adhere to uphold this, those not existence and is not non-existence, and try to find the third possibilities, then you will never come to realize the Madhyamaka standpoint. So then, therefore, Nagarjuna's fundamental thesis does not refer to the simple existence and non-existence when it states, to say it exists is a conception of permanence. To say it does not exist is a view of annihilations. Hence, the learned should not deal in either existence or non-existence. This clearly means that the person who claims that things intrinsically exist will have a view of permanence and annihilations. So it doesn't say, because there might be, the system, it might say that the Nagarjuna stated in his fundamental thesis to say that it exists is a conception of permanence, and it does not exist is a view of annihilations. Therefore, one's answer to such questions is that where not just mere existence or non-existence here, that's not what we are talking about. It is rather referring to the intrinsic existence or non-intrinsic existence. If one, uphold the view of intrinsic existence of things and event, then one falls into the extreme view of eternalism. If one, rejects something that doesn't exist because it doesn't exist intrinsically, then one falls into extreme view of nihilism. This is what is meant by.
Zhōngāmi yume de zimba ngōpo yume de tawa la xie ne de yo to ji shiro ngōpo dang ngōpo meba tawa la yue na taba dang cheba tawa tawa ju xie na de da xia gāngxi rāngxi ju yue na de ne meba meba ta ngō ju tata me jeba de na cheba tawa ju ru gāngxi rāngxi ju yue ba de ne rāngxi le do ba meba na 나요 메바 마이테 데나 데타나 장신 요바니데 켈랑베 타바타와 타완절라 뭐 내가 뭐 내비고스 뭐보 장신 켈랑네 데타 데이셔 시 말에 타와 데치 시바 메도 시 켈랑바 치바 타와 타완절로 시 장신 저 요바 켈랑바라 다다 당하지 ranxin de shiba dona meba songji yoba zang de shiba zang de ma song so bibda balta le so.
So Chandrakriti's clear words explain that in this passage, the conception of existence and non-existence refers to the view of things exist and the view that things do not exist. It then says, why is it that when you have the view that things exist and the view things do not exist, it follows that you have views of the permanence and of inhalations. As Nagarjuna's fundamental theory says, whatever exists intrinsically is permanent, since it does not become non-existence. If you say that an intrinsically existence, things that arose before, is now non-existence, that entails the extreme of nihilism, annihilations. Since intrinsic existence is not overcome, something that is said to be intrinsic existence would never become a non-existence. Thus, the assertion that something is intrinsic existence entails the view of permanence, and also a view of inhalation is entailed by the assertion that there was intrinsic nature is things that things at an earlier time, but it is now been destroyed and no longer exist. Chandrakriti calls the assertion of the intrinsic existence and the view of permanence, and says that if you assert that later the destruction of what was formerly intrinsically existent, such is the view of nihilism. It does not say this of the mere existence and mere disintegrations.
Bina Ranshin Chuba Kalian Sasona, Tata Kanajugri. Any Tata Ranshin Kali Chinchilla, any Zawan in the Mapa Kanachagri, Cheta Kanajugers and Jichikan, Yoba the Major Tabatase, the Tendua. Ranshin Chuba Kalian Chinchilla, Ranshin Chuba Dosho, the Ranshin Mebara, Ranshin Meba Kamalena, Ranshin Chuba, the Automato, and Tata Negri. 매버 차그마리 이나야 그서기 뇌마 여바지 단단 내 것을 변의 주도 지나 뇌마 여바지 단단 내 것을 시내 매버에서 나와이나 아니 양 체다의 개념도 그래서 다까지 장신지 주버 개념 친절라 아니 되게 다치지 탈라 내그래서 돼.
So in brief, in this particular the paragraph that we have read, it explains, so long as you accept the things that exist intrinsically, then one falls into the extreme view of eternalism and the nihilisms. Because here now, let's take an example of that, that you have already accepted that such as entity form, the form is and metaphor, the form that exists earlier, but when you comes to the form, when it comes to understanding of form doesn't exist intrinsically, then you accept the form become a non-existence. And how can it be that it actually exists in the earlier, but then when it comes now, you are now you're accepting that doesn't exist, and this is not, this is something that is contradictory. So that very, acceptance of your form that exists, but it doesn't exist later, will take it, will enables you to fall into the extreme view of nihilism and eternalism, the both nihilism and eternalism.
세디 내가 속에 예제샤와 따바다 매제 치바다 세디 루타몽와 제다이 아니 예메 가야 켈레가 면고를 주중데레 센데데 아니 여바장의 매바 당의 작게 말해 자신제 여바장다 아니 타니즈 매바장의 작게 세데 세고선다 예제 내는 주범 보드 팔레탈레지 예제샤와 매제샤와 따치的到谢바 대다니 강시 장신제 여바谢소제 따치진 루루
So then here it says, it explains here, also Buddha Palita's commentary on the fundamental deities clearly explains that when Nagarjuna says whatever exists intrinsically is permanent and so forth, he is indicating the type of permanence and the type of inhalations he meant when we explain that to say they exist or to say do not exist is to have view of permanence or the inhalations.
마다체던 롤 세와 템비셔 세요디 아니 된주기 치기 예제샤와 따바다 세데 라신제 여바다 타니데 메바로 고고레서는 아니 배 세보도 콘도사 다 쇼지는 아주 좋은 콘도사 그래 쇼지는 소소기 전생이 되는 제바제 두고로 와.
So therefore it says now when the Nagarjuna says in the fundamental deities where he said that something that exists with eternalism and then something that doesn't exist in nihilism doesn't mean that mere existence and non-existence, but the Nagarjuna refers to the intrinsic existence and non-intrinsic existence. Because if you hold on to that particular passage literally, then this will take you nowhere but to the extreme of nihilism and extreme of eternalisms.
당가서 제세상은 돈비 토네 니 용도서라지 다 다체년의 제토나 될라 다들 토바 장제니 내가 저 당생이 시바데 15차거리 세네 내가 저는 그 보레는 마서나 자도 차거리 세네 배상노는 동반이지 땅 토바 장제 니 쇼지 가사 편여에 송하라 인자는 어떻게 다다 지선이 맞을 생들이나 이렇게 체년 제비 니 게 자와디 털라되네 아니 돈이 또 비실라 송저제 내주냐서래네 니 전부모도 봐 아니 지 조비 상제제 고관 용환이도 타버지 아니 예 라니 타버 용환 맞지 아니 대다 대바지 총이 선제 타제장 니 고관 되니는 용환이도 타와데 용바 쇼 나랑랑 이제 토바 쇼 니제 네바양 되는 쇼베 너무 상제는 이제 신절로도서 사나이네 와다 만난 초하다 데비관데 나다.
So when we talk about this, the view of emptiness, it should not just, one should not rely merely on what the text explains and following the text, but rather one should also come up with one's own reasonings what that has said, what other system has said, and what you think about. So this is how we should compare ourselves, not just by relying upon the textual understanding alone will not take us to that understanding of ultimate nature of reality. So it has a great benefits, just by, even though that one may not have a view of ultimate nature of reality or the emptiness, just by listening to the teachings of the emptiness, just by reflecting one's mind about the teachings of the emptiness, will actually will dismantles our grasping at the fixation of the grasping itself. The fixation grasping itself will be dismantled. It has a great benefit. So now, just for 2 hours we have taken 2 hours of our time listening to such a profound teachings. So may the merit that we may have gained by listening to the teachings become a cause for understanding, or cause of realizing this special insight and the shamatha and the special insight, the unity of shamatha and special insight. May all other sentient beings to be able to, on the path of the yoga of this practice of special insight and the shamatha. So may all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in front of oneself please bless me to be able to do this.
Ale ode chenda cheba ye tari chi likhi do ayun te ge chi karsa ke tu so yana tari chi ne yo tari je de la yang nga so nga geno sebo te yang ko chi yo lo chela tamro yino re yang te mano jig ma so chenda cheba ge tombo te le yo ba che ni ba te le me ba che ni te dawa te le te je la dawa ni rang ho ni yo so yana te le yo ba che ro chela da.
So second week of the October, Rinpoche will be Rinpoche is invited by one of the monk, so he will be visiting there. So we'll have no class on the second week of October.
Sri Lanka Gelo Sebo Dingi Manga Des
Sri Lanka temple.
What the Tari J ne Chile Sigursa. Teni T Jela and is Uncle Nina, Jenda Chuchiba Tari Jela at Cousin Javando, thank you.
So November, the 8th of November, I'm leaving for India. So we have already mentioned about that during our previous teaching.
Oh, to check.
That's all.
Kada yamba kashi sabba de lome mare ke don jowa nanren jaye ombo doje ji tyama zumbi tsera kundo jambe yangje tsewe je zune dembe remba kyozan nanje yene jobe je na nye Rangi Jijin Tobi Nangjani Shudra Zhe Changye Tagi Doye Yije Miba Sejin Jaye Tenba Yurin Zinju Jin Tenba Rijin Choge Majo Chajan Nyamba Jibi Shudin Nije Chenbu Yiro Joboy Pede Dede Sewa Sheba Shu Sejin Jai Mijo Chene Ne Du Shangchu Nangju Febe Tande Nangju Yela Bede Shin Jaye Zeba Rendo Chungju 朗藏诸边天见诸邪见，结见世界莫当面面见，切让更多家园好不易，朗当这我马就见，刚才天波救了绝绝见，世间诸了尊宝地缘财，土地能就大度诸邪见，这些将此修。有就见，就是那面苦涩老的见，那个真的说就结不能，路上定必正面扫松见，昼夜面色大多念就见，高着热云过于心高，便当的我毛脸就业，现在叫我点子找主意。小别身体不练就见，江边八月知道千不懂，更多从不点样的见的，越到根据结束道路上，给我的道当机老多我，就从西边叫我当机，我功劳就多好不。大千个月早晚都跟着，双波学习老多。哎呀，都切呢，Good night。
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.